The swirling, violet-hued sky stretched endlessly above Ryan Miller as he stood at the threshold of an alien jungle that looked more like an otherworldly nightmare. Thick, twisted trees rose like giants, their bark glistening with strange, phosphorescent patterns. Overhead, immense blue-green fronds hung low, dripping moisture that splashed onto Ryan's shoulder. The air was hot, sticky, and filled with sounds that didn't belong on Earth, the deep hum of unseen creatures, sharp clicking noises from the underbrush, and the distant wail of something large enough to shake the ground. He tightened his grip on the small survival pack they had given him and adjusted the strap over his shoulder. To his left, the Vrixel Overseer, a tall, insectoid figure with a ridged carapace and golden eyes that glowed faintly, turned to him. Its mouth parts twitched and the translation device pinned to its chest emitted a metallic, synthesized voice. "You will have no further supplies. If you die, your body will remain where it falls. If you return on the fourth morning, you will be honored among our kind." Ryan glanced at the small crowd of Vrixel gathered nearby, their jagged silhouettes outlined by the unnatural light of the sky. He felt their cold stares, though he suspected it was more indifference than hostility. A few humans stood farther off, representatives of Earth's fledgling alliance with the Vrixel. They looked worried, maybe even pitying, though none of them made any move to intervene. This wasn't their challenge. It was Ryan's. A hand gripped his arm. He turned and saw Connors, his fellow outside researcher and longtime friend, staring at him with narrowed eyes. Connors' face was grim, his jaw set like a man who didn't agree with what was happening. "You don't have to do this," Connors said, his voice low. "They won't think less of you if you walk away. Everyone knows their jungle's a death trap." Ryan shook his head, forcing a small smile. "And let them think humans can't handle a little wilderness? No way. I'll be fine. I spent 2 summers trekking through the Andes without so much as a GPS. This is just a camping trip with a few extra hazards." Connor's lips thinned, but he released Ryan's arm. "Just don't try to be a hero. If it gets bad, you get out, got it?" "Got it." Ryan gave him a reassuring slap on the shoulder. "Don't worry, Connors. I'll see you in 4 days. You can buy me a beer when I'm back." Before Connors could respond, the Vrixel Overseer gestured toward the jungle. "Enter. Your time begins now." Ryan adjusted the strap of his pack one last time and took a deep breath. "Here we go," he muttered under his breath, then stepped into the shadowy forest. The heat was suffocating, and the air was so thick with humidity that Ryan felt as though he were breathing through a wet sponge. The first hour passed in relative quiet. He followed a faint animal path, careful to avoid touching any plants that looked too bright or too inviting. Experience had taught him that in wild places on any planet, the most colorful flora often came with a hidden price. The bioluminescent growths that glowed softly along the trunks and vines were particularly suspect, and he gave them a wide berth. After a while, the terrain became more challenging. The soft ground turned marshy, sucking at his boots, and the underbrush grew denser. Ryan hacked through some of the thicker vines with his knife, sweat streaming down his face. He paused to take a sip from his water bottle, glancing around warily. The sounds of the jungle had shifted, more rustling, more distant screeches, and an unsettling silence in the immediate vicinity. It was then he noticed a faint, rhythmic clicking noise coming from his right. Ryan froze, hand tightening on his knife. He peered through the thick foliage but saw nothing. The clicking continued, slow and deliberate. He crouched low, moving carefully toward the sound. If it was some kind of animal, it could be a threat or it could be dinner. Either way, he needed to know what was out there. Pushing aside a wide, waxy leaf, Ryan finally caught sight of the source, a strange, feathered creature with 3 legs and a beak-like mouth. It stood about 2 feet tall, its plumage a mix of dark green and orange, and its body seemed to shimmer faintly under the dim light filtering through the canopy. It tilted its head at him, one large, glossy eye blinking slowly. Ryan froze, his grip on the knife firm, but he made no sudden movements. The creature clicked its beak once, twice, then stopped. For a tense moment, they stared at each other. Ryan considered his options. The creature wasn't advancing, and it didn't look like a predator. In fact, its posture seemed almost curious. Ryan slowly lowered the knife, raising his other hand palm out, a universal gesture of peace. The creature blinked again, then turned and hopped a few steps away. It stopped, glanced back at him, and clicked its beak twice more. Then it took a few more steps and paused again. Ryan frowned. Was it leading him somewhere? He glanced around the jungle, noting the growing shadows as the sun dipped lower. He'd need to find a secure spot to make camp soon, and the idea of following a strange alien bird thing was probably not the wisest decision. But the creature didn't seem hostile, and something about its behavior intrigued him. "What the hell?" he muttered. "Let's see where this goes." He followed the creature at a careful distance. It led him through a narrow passage in the underbrush, over a fallen log covered in luminescent moss, and finally to a small clearing. In the center of the clearing was a cluster of large, smooth stones arranged in a rough semicircle. The ground here was firmer, and there was a small stream trickling along one side. Ryan's eyes widened. This was as good a campsite as any he could have hoped for. The creature clicked its beak again, then hopped onto one of the stones and settled down, folding its legs beneath it. Ryan crouched near the stream, filling his water bottle and glancing back at the creature. "Thanks," he said, not expecting any response. The creature just blinked at him, its plumage shimmering faintly in the dim light. Ryan set up a basic camp, laying out his emergency blanket and starting a small fire with the flint. The warmth was a welcome relief in the damp air, and the flickering light made the clearing feel slightly less ominous. As the fire crackled, Ryan leaned back against one of the stones and let out a long breath. Day one wasn't over yet, but he'd made it this far. That was something. He looked over at the strange creature, still perched on the stone. "You're not half bad company," he said with a small grin. The creature tilted its head at him and clicked once, as if in agreement. "Maybe I'll call you Clicker," Ryan said. "How's that sound?" The creature clicked twice and ruffled its feathers. Ryan laughed softly. "Yeah, Clicker it is. Let's hope tomorrow's as easy as today." As the firelight danced across the clearing, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just luck. Clicker's appearance, the clearing, the stream, it all seemed too convenient. He glanced toward the dark jungle beyond the clearing, wondering what else might be out there. The challenge was far from over, but for now he had a place to rest, a fire to keep him warm, and an unlikely companion by his side. "Guess we'll see what happens next," he murmured, closing his eyes and letting the soft sounds of the jungle lull him into a light, uneasy sleep. The following morning, the jungle had transformed. The mist hanging in the trees made the entire forest seem like a different world. Vines glistened with dew, and distant calls echoed through the dense foliage. Ryan stirred from his makeshift bed, rubbing his face and stretching out his arms. "I'd kill for some coffee," he muttered to himself. Nearby, the creature he had named Clicker tilted its head, watching him closely. It clicked once, then hopped down from its perch and darted toward a thick clump of brush. Ryan shook his head. "Not much for conversation, are you?" He rummaged through his small pack, pulling out the flint and a knife. His stomach growled, and he sighed. "All right, food first, then I figure out which direction leads back to civilization." Clicker emerged from the brush holding something shiny in its beak. Ryan squinted at it. "What have you got there, buddy?" He knelt down, holding out a hand. "Come on, show me." The creature dropped the item, a small, metallic cylinder, onto the ground. Ryan picked it up, turning it over in his hands. It was clearly manufactured, with smooth edges and what looked like alien markings along the side. "Where'd you find this?" he asked, though he knew he wouldn't get an answer. Clicker chirped and darted back into the jungle. Ryan frowned, standing up and looking in the direction the creature had gone. "Great. I guess I'm following you again." He stashed the cylinder in his pack and set off after Clicker, stepping carefully over roots and ducking under low-hanging branches. The creature moved quickly, but it never went so far ahead that he lost sight of it. Ryan glanced back over his shoulder from time to time, more out of instinct than any real suspicion. The forest was alive with sound, and it was hard to tell whether the noises were natural or something more sinister. After about an hour of weaving through the jungle, Ryan came to a stop. In front of him, the trees parted to reveal another clearing, and in the center stood a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his clothes were a mix of human and alien materials. His dark hair was tied back, and he carried a long staff that seemed to have both a traditional and a high-tech design. The man turned as Ryan approached, his expression wary. "Who are you?" Ryan raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Easy. I'm Ryan Miller. I'm just trying to survive out here like everyone else." "Survive?" The man's tone was skeptical. "You're part of the trial, then?" Ryan nodded. "Yeah. They threw me out here yesterday." "You too?" The man hesitated, then nodded. "Name's Marcus. I've been out here for 2 days. Not sure how much longer I can keep this up." Ryan relaxed a bit. "Good to meet you, Marcus. Seems like we're both in the same boat." He glanced down at Clicker, who had hopped over to Marcus and was clicking at him. "That one yours?" Marcus shook his head. "No. It started following me yesterday. Seems friendly enough." Ryan chuckled. "Looks like it's adopted us both." They spent a few moments sizing each other up. Marcus didn't seem hostile, but Ryan could tell he was on edge. Not that he could blame him. Surviving in this jungle wasn't easy, and trust was a rare commodity. Still, having another human around could make the difference between making it out alive and not. "So," Ryan said, breaking the silence, "what's your plan?" "Just keep moving." Marcus shrugged. I've been trying to find a stream that leads somewhere. But every path seems to circle back on itself. It's like the jungle doesn't want us to leave. Yeah, I've noticed that too, Ryan admitted. But I found this earlier. He pulled the metallic cylinder from his pack and showed it to Marcus. Clicker here brought it to me. Looks like it's not just plants and predators out here, someone's left something behind. Marcus took the cylinder and examined it. Alien tech. Probably Vrixel. Could be a marker or a beacon. Ryan frowned. Beacon for what? Could be for supplies. Or it could be a warning. Hard to say. Marcus handed it back. If you found that, there might be more. Could lead us somewhere. Ryan nodded. All right. 2 heads are better than 1. Let's team up, see if we can figure this out together. Marcus didn't answer right away. He studied Ryan carefully as if weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. Fine. But if you turn out to be more trouble than you're worth, I'm going my own way. Fair enough, Ryan said, smiling. You won't regret it. The two of them started moving together, with Clicker darting ahead to scout the path. Ryan found it easier with someone else to talk to, even if Marcus wasn't exactly chatty. They compared notes on what they'd seen so far: strange, glowing plants, animals that resembled earth creatures but weren't quite the same, and odd patches of terrain where their compasses went haywire. As they walked, Marcus occasionally stopped to mark trees with a knife, creating a trail they could follow back if necessary. Ryan watched, impressed. You've done this sort of thing before, haven't you? Not in a jungle like this, Marcus replied. But I've been in tough spots. Fieldwork on alien worlds, survival training, that sort of thing. Ah, Ryan said. So you're a professional. I'm just a guy who likes to hike and camp. Then stick close, Marcus said with a faint smirk. I'll show you how the professionals do it. By midday, they came across another clearing. This one was different. There were no strange plants or glowing creatures, just a circle of stones and a tall, metal pole jutting from the ground. The pole hummed faintly, and a small panel at its base blinked with soft green light. What do you make of this? Ryan asked, stepping closer. Marcus knelt by the panel, inspecting it. Looks like some kind of energy source. Could be powering something nearby. Ryan looked around. Like what? I don't see any buildings or structures. Marcus frowned. That doesn't mean there aren't any. It might be underground or camouflaged. Or it might not be a structure at all. Could be a device, a transport pad, who knows? Ryan scratched his head. Well, what do we do with it? Marcus stood. We keep looking. If there's one of these, there might be more. And if we find enough of them, maybe we'll figure out where they lead. Sounds like a plan, Ryan said, then glanced at Clicker. The creature had perched on one of the stones, watching them intently. You coming too, little guy? Clicker clicked twice and fluttered down to the ground, hopping after them as they moved deeper into the jungle. As the day wore on, Ryan and Marcus started to get into a rhythm. They took turns leading, kept their eyes peeled for more alien devices, and shared what little food they had. Ryan found that Marcus was more than just a survival expert. He was quick to improvise solutions to problems, like crafting a makeshift net to catch fish in a muddy stream or rigging up a simple alarm system using vines and loose rocks. By the time the sun began to set, they had found 2 more metal poles, each with a similar green panel. Marcus seemed more optimistic than he had earlier, though he didn't say it outright. Ryan didn't press him on it. They'd made progress, and that was enough. They set up camp in a sheltered spot, with Marcus taking the first watch while Ryan tried to sleep. As he drifted off, he thought about how different things were from the day before. He wasn't alone anymore. He had an ally, someone who knew what they were doing. Maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance of making it out of this jungle after all. The night was restless. The alien jungle didn't quiet down after dark. Instead, it seemed to come alive with new noises, shrieks, guttural growls, and a steady, low-pitched hum that set Ryan's nerves on edge. Sleep had been a fleeting thing, stolen in short bursts before some unseen creature sent him back to full alertness. The small fire they'd built offered scant comfort, casting long, flickering shadows on the trees around their camp. Marcus stirred beside him, tossing another stick onto the flames. How long has it been? He muttered. Ryan checked his wrist chronometer. About 4 hours. Your turn to sleep. Marcus shook his head. I'll be fine. You need more rest. I'll rest when we're out of this jungle, Ryan replied, suppressing a yawn. Besides, you're the one who needs to stay sharp. You're the survival expert here. Expert? Marcus let out a dry laugh. I've done some training, sure. Spent a couple of months on a frontier world where the locals thought humans were a food source. But this place is different. You think you've figured it out and then it throws something new at you. Ryan smirked, though it didn't reach his eyes. Yeah, I'm starting to notice that. Clicker chirped from its perch on a low branch nearby. The strange creature had been unusually quiet all evening, its attention fixed on the dense foliage beyond the firelight. Ryan glanced in the same direction. You think it sees something? Marcus squinted at the shadows. Probably. These things live out here. They know the jungle better than we ever will. If it's watching, we should be too. The two men fell silent, each scanning the darkness. Ryan felt the weight of the jungle pressing in on him. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, really watched, not just by animals but by something that understood them. The occasional crackle of the fire did little to calm his nerves. After a few tense minutes, Marcus sighed and sat back. Maybe I should get a little shut-eye after all. You good to watch the fire? Sure, Ryan said. Get some rest. I'll wake you if anything moves. Marcus nodded and lay down on the makeshift bedroll he'd pieced together from vines and bark. Within minutes, his breathing slowed and evened out. Ryan leaned back against a smooth tree trunk, watching the firelight dance. Clicker hopped down from its branch and perched next to him. Its glossy, intelligent eyes met his. What about you? Ryan whispered. What's keeping you so quiet tonight? Clicker clicked once, then tilted its head toward the undergrowth. Ryan followed its gaze but saw nothing unusual. He sighed. You know, if you could talk, this would be a whole lot easier. The creature ruffled its feathers, if that's what they were, and chirped softly. It almost sounded like sympathy. The next morning, the jungle was no less daunting. If anything, it felt more oppressive. Ryan and Marcus packed up their scant supplies and moved out quickly, guided more by instinct than any clear direction. The day before, they'd found 3 of the alien poles, each identical to the first. Now they were determined to find more, hoping the trail would lead them somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't this place. Ryan wiped sweat from his forehead, his shirt clinging uncomfortably to his back. Remind me why we're still alive? Marcus smirked. Stubbornness. Maybe stupidity. Yeah, that checks out. Ryan kicked at a vine that had snaked across their path. This is worse than any camping trip I've ever been on. Camping, Marcus said, glancing over his shoulder. You keep calling this a camping trip. Camping trips have tents. Coolers. Marshmallows. This is just trying not to die. Ryan grinned despite himself. Hey, at least we've got Clicker. The creature darted ahead of them, stopping every so often to chirp and click. It seemed to know where it was going, and they'd started trusting it to lead the way. Marcus shook his head. I'm not sure if that thing's the smartest animal I've ever seen or just really lucky. Probably both, Ryan said. But if it keeps us from walking straight into another trap, I'll take it. They walked in silence for a while, their boots squelching in the damp earth. The jungle grew thicker, the trees twisting together like something out of a nightmare. Vines hung low, some with spines that gleamed in the faint light. Ryan felt his energy flagging, the constant humidity and lack of decent food wearing him down. Still, he pushed forward. They had no choice. Around midday. His knife scanning the trees. What is it? Predator. Maybe, Marcus said. Or maybe it's worse. A moment later, they heard it. A faint whirring sound, like a drone or a piece of machinery. It grew louder, coming from somewhere ahead. Ryan tensed. What the hell is that? Could be the Vrixel, Marcus said. Maybe they're checking up on us. Or maybe it's something they left behind. Ryan didn't like the sound of that. Should we avoid it? Marcus shook his head. Too late for that. It's coming this way. The noise grew louder, and then, through the trees, they saw it. A small, sleek device hovering just above the ground. It was shaped like a sphere, its surface smooth and metallic. A faint green light pulsed at its center. Recon drone, Marcus muttered. Vrixel tech. They use these to patrol the jungle. What do we do? Ryan whispered. Stay still. It might just pass us by. They froze, watching as the drone hovered closer. Clicker darted up into the branches, its small form blending into the shadows. The drone stopped a few meters away, scanning the area with a soft, rhythmic hum. Ryan held his breath, clutching his knife tightly. The drone turned slightly, its light intensifying, then continued on its way, disappearing into the undergrowth. Marcus exhaled slowly. Okay, that's not good. You think they know we're here? Ryan asked. Maybe, maybe not. Could be part of the trial, or it could be unrelated. Either way, we need to keep moving. Ryan nodded, falling in step behind Marcus. His pulse was still pounding. Whatever that drone was looking for, he hoped it wasn't them. By late afternoon, they'd found another alien pole. This one partially hidden by a tangle of vines. Marcus cut the vines away with his knife, revealing the familiar green panel. He knelt down, studying it. This one's a little different. The markings on the base, these are navigation symbols. Navigation? Ryan asked. You mean like a map? Sort of. The Vrixel used these symbols to mark paths. This one seems to indicate a direction. Marcus pointed toward a cluster of trees to their right. We follow that heading, we might find something. Ryan looked at the direction Marcus indicated. The path was barely visible, a narrow gap between trees that seemed darker and more foreboding than the jungle around them. Are we sure about this? No, Marcus admitted. But it's better than wandering aimlessly. Fair point, Ryan said, though he didn't sound convinced. He adjusted the strap of his pack and followed Marcus toward the path. Clicker chirped and hopped after them, its movements as quick and nimble as ever. As they pressed deeper into the jungle, Ryan felt the air grow cooler. The oppressive heat and humidity began to lessen, replaced by a faint chill. The trees here were taller, their bark darker, and the undergrowth less dense. It was almost as if they had crossed into another part of the jungle entirely. The change was unsettling, but Ryan couldn't deny it felt good to be out of the stifling heat. Marcus slowed down, his eyes scanning the trees. Something's different here. Yeah, Ryan said. It feels off. Off or promising? Marcus asked, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. Ryan chuckled. You're the professional. You tell me. Let's call it promising, Marcus said, his voice steady. If we're lucky, it might even lead us somewhere safe. By the time Ryan and Marcus reached the top of the narrow ridge, the sun was setting, staining the jungle canopy with hues of gold and crimson. The air was cooler now, and the constant din of chirping and buzzing seemed to fade into the background. They had been following the markers for hours, each pole guiding them further into the dense, alien wilderness. Now, on this elevated perch, they could see something far ahead, an unnatural clearing, distinct from the chaotic sprawl of the jungle. You see that? Marcus asked, pointing at the faintly illuminated patch in the distance. It shimmered slightly, as if reflecting light from some unseen source. Ryan squinted. Yeah, looks like it's a straight shot from here. Marcus glanced at the darkening sky. We'll need to move quickly. Night falls fast out here, and I don't want to run into anything we can't handle. Ryan gave a mock salute. Lead the way, Captain. Marcus rolled his eyes, but a hint of a smile crossed his face as he began descending the ridge. Ryan followed closely, keeping his hand on the hilt of his knife. Clicker, ever the curious scout, darted ahead and disappeared into the underbrush. Ryan felt a pang of unease whenever the creature left their sight, though it always seemed to reappear right when they needed it. So, Ryan said after a few minutes of silence, what do you think we'll find there? Some alien outpost? A shuttle off this planet? Marcus shook his head. Could be anything, but I doubt it's a shuttle. If the Vrixel wanted us gone, they'd just pick us up. Whatever it is, they meant for us to find it. Ryan frowned. That doesn't make me feel any better. Marcus chuckled softly. It's not supposed to, but at least we've got a destination now. The trail wound down the ridge and into a wide expanse of gnarled trees. Their twisted branches reached low, forcing Ryan to duck repeatedly. As they pushed through the last of the dense growth, the forest opened into a clearing unlike any they'd seen before. A large, circular platform sat at the center, surrounded by a series of smaller poles that emitted a faint, greenish glow. The air here felt different, calmer, almost static. The usual cacophony of jungle sounds had fallen silent. Marcus crouched at the edge of the clearing, motioning for Ryan to do the same. Let's not rush in. Could be traps. Ryan nodded, scanning the area. Or guards. Exactly. They watched for a few minutes, but nothing stirred. No drones, no alien creatures. Just the faint hum of the poles and the shimmering light of the platform. After a while, Marcus gestured for Ryan to follow and the two men crept forward. As they approached the platform, they noticed strange symbols etched into its surface, symbols that matched the ones on the poles they had been following. Any idea what this says? Ryan asked, gesturing to the markings. Marcus knelt down, tracing a finger over one of the symbols. Not exactly, but I've seen similar patterns in Vrixel tech before. Could be a control panel or a portal. Portal. Ryan raised an eyebrow. You mean like a teleportation device? Marcus shrugged. It's possible. The Vrixel have been using technology we barely understand for centuries. They're not big on explaining their secrets. Ryan looked around nervously. So, what do we do? Just step on it and hope for the best? Not yet, Marcus said. We need to be sure it's safe. Could be it's activated by something we're not seeing. Or maybe it only works at a certain time. Let's take a closer look. As Marcus examined the platform, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, scanning the tree-line. Everything was still. No sign of drones, no glint of alien armor. Yet the sense of unease lingered. Clicker appeared suddenly, darting onto the platform and chirping excitedly. Ryan let out a nervous laugh. Well, I guess Clicker's not afraid of it. Marcus smirked. If it zaps him into another dimension, we'll know to stay off. Clicker clicked twice and flapped its small wings, seemingly unharmed. It settled near the center of the platform, staring at the two men as if expecting them to follow. Guess we don't have much choice, Ryan said. You want to go first, or should I? Marcus hesitated, then stepped onto the platform. The surface was smooth and slightly warm to the touch, but nothing happened. No sudden lights, no energy surge. Just the faint hum of the surrounding poles. He turned back to Ryan. Seems safe enough. Ryan joined him on the platform, his boots making a faint clink against the metal surface. He looked around, half expecting something dramatic to happen, but the clearing remained calm. Well, this is anticlimactic, he said. Now what? Marcus frowned, scanning the markings again. There's got to be a trigger. Maybe the cylinder you found. Ryan dug into his pack and pulled out the small metallic cylinder Clicker had brought to him earlier. He held it up, unsure of what to do. Where do I put it? Look for a slot or an indentation, Marcus said. Something that matches its shape. Ryan examined the platform, running his hands along the etched patterns. Finally, he found a small recess near the edge. It was just the right size for the cylinder. With a deep breath, he placed the cylinder into the slot and stepped back. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the platform began to glow. A faint, shimmering light spread outward from the cylinder, illuminating the symbols and casting the clearing in an otherworldly glow. The hum grew louder, resonating in their chests. Ryan and Marcus exchanged a tense glance, each gripping their weapons instinctively. Suddenly, the light shifted, forming a translucent dome around the platform. The jungle outside the dome blurred, as though seen through a frosted glass. Inside, the air felt lighter, almost weightless. Ryan stepped closer to Marcus. What's happening? Not sure, Marcus said, his voice low. But whatever it is, it's starting now. The light in the center of the platform began to coalesce, forming a shape that slowly became more defined. Ryan squinted, trying to make sense of it. Was it a hologram? A machine? As the shape solidified, it became clear that it wasn't mechanical at all. It was a figure, tall, graceful, and undeniably alien. The Vrixel female who appeared before them had a shimmering, insectoid form that glowed faintly in the dome's light. Her golden eyes locked onto theirs, and her mandibles twitched in what could have been a smile. She spoke, her voice resonating through the dome. But the words were in her own language, incomprehensible to Ryan. Marcus held up his hands. We're not here to fight, he said calmly. We just followed the trail. The Vrixel tilted her head, as though considering his words. After a moment, she tapped a device on her wrist, and her next words came through a translator. You have proven yourselves resourceful. Few make it this far. Who are you? Ryan asked. I am Keeper Zaluna, she said. This trial is more than a test of survival. It is a measure of understanding between species, between worlds. Marcus exchanged a glance with Ryan. Understanding? Is that why you led us here? Zaluna nodded. You have demonstrated cooperation, ingenuity, and courage. That is why you have been chosen. Ryan frowned. Chosen for what? For what comes next, Zaluna said. She stepped closer, her golden eyes gleaming. The trial was never about simply surviving. It was about proving that you can adapt, that you can see beyond your own limitations. You have earned the right to know more, to take the next step. Ryan swallowed hard. And if we don't want to take the next step? Zaluna's mandibles twitched again, and the dome's light flickered. Then you may leave. But the knowledge you would gain here will be lost to you. Ryan turned to Marcus, his voice low. What do you think? Marcus hesitated. I think we've come too far to walk away now. Ryan nodded slowly, then turned back to Zaluna. Okay, we're in. What's the next step? Zaluna raised a hand, and the light in the dome grew brighter. Then let us begin. As the dome's light intensified, the air around Ryan and Marcus seemed to hum with an almost musical resonance. Zaluna stepped forward, her glowing form steady and purposeful, as if she had rehearsed this moment countless times. Ryan felt his pulse quicken. He glanced at Marcus, whose tense posture mirrored his own. What exactly does the next step mean? Ryan asked, his voice rising over the strange thrumming sound. Zaluna regarded him calmly. It means you are no longer passive observers. You are participants now, contributors to something greater. That's a little vague, Marcus said, his tone firm. We need specifics. What are we getting into? Zaluna tilted her head slightly. Do you trust me? Ryan laughed nervously. Trust? We just met you. No offense, but you haven't exactly given us a reason to trust you. I brought you here, Zaluna said, her voice steady. You followed the markers. You survived the jungle. And now you stand on this platform, not by chance, but by design. If I had intended you harm, you would not be here. Marcus crossed his arms. That doesn't mean we should blindly walk into whatever this is. True, Zaluna agreed. And I do not ask for blind faith. Only that you take one more step. Ryan hesitated, exchanging a look with Marcus. What do you think? Marcus sighed. We've come this far. We might as well see it through. Ryan turned back to Zaluna. All right, we're listening. Zaluna nodded, her golden eyes gleaming. The platform you stand upon is a gateway. It will take you to a place few have seen. A place where you can learn truths that have been hidden from your kind. But be warned, once you cross through, there is no turning back. What you discover may change how you see your world and yourselves. Great, Ryan muttered. Cryptic warnings. That's always a good sign. Let's get on with it, Marcus said, stepping closer to the center of the platform. What do we need to do? Stand together, Zaluna instructed. When you are ready, I will activate the gateway. Marcus looked at Ryan. Ready? Ryan took a deep breath. Ready as I'll ever be. They moved to the center of the platform, standing shoulder to shoulder. Zaluna raised a slender, clawed hand and tapped a series of symbols on the glowing surface. The hum grew louder and the air around them seemed to ripple. The translucent dome shimmered and the jungle outside faded from view. Stay close, Marcus said under his breath. No matter what happens, we stick together. Got it, Ryan said, though his voice betrayed his nervousness. A beam of light shot upward from the center of the platform, enveloping them in a radiant glow. For a moment, Ryan felt weightless, as though the ground had vanished beneath him. The jungle sounds disappeared entirely, replaced by a low, rhythmic pulse that resonated in his chest. He squeezed his eyes shut as the light grew brighter and brighter until, suddenly, it stopped. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the jungle. The platform had brought them to a vast, open chamber that seemed to stretch on forever. The walls were smooth and metallic, shimmering with faint, shifting patterns that reminded Ryan of the markings on the poles they had followed. The air was crisp, almost sterile, and the only sound was the soft hum of unseen machinery. Where are we? Ryan asked, his voice echoing slightly. This is the archive, Zaluna said, her voice calm and reverent. A repository of knowledge gathered over millennia. It holds the history of countless civilizations, the secrets of ancient technologies, and the wisdom of those who came before you. Marcus looked around, his expression skeptical. If it's such a treasure trove, why isn't it more accessible? Why go through all this just to get here? Because knowledge is a responsibility, Zaluna said. Not everyone is prepared to bear it. Those who reach this place have proven their resourcefulness and their willingness to face the unknown. It is not given freely. It must be earned. Ryan wandered toward one of the walls, running his fingers along the smooth surface. It pulsed faintly under his touch, as if responding to him. So, we're supposed to learn something here? About what? About yourselves, Zaluna said. And about the role your kind will play in the future of this galaxy. Ryan turned to face her. What role? We're just two guys trying not to die in a jungle. You are much more than that, Zaluna said. her golden eyes glinting. Your species has a unique perspective, one that can bridge the gaps between worlds. But to do so, you must understand your own nature. This archive will show you what you need to see. Before Ryan could ask what she meant, the walls began to shift. Panels slid open, revealing floating holograms and intricate patterns of light. Images appeared, scenes from Earth's history, moments of triumph and tragedy, humanity's first steps into space, and encounters with alien species. Ryan felt a lump in his throat as he watched the montage unfold. He saw faces he recognized, events he had learned about in school, and even a few things that were new to him. It was overwhelming. Marcus stood silently, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he spoke. So what's the point of all this? What are we supposed to take away from it? Zeluna stepped closer, her voice gentle. The point is not to show you what you already know, but to help you see the connections, the patterns that emerge when you look at the whole. It is these patterns that will guide you. Ryan stared at the holograms, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Connections? Patterns? That's a little abstract. Life is not a series of isolated events, Zeluna said. Everything is connected. Every choice you make ripples outward, affecting others in ways you cannot always see. Understanding these connections is the first step toward creating a future where your kind can thrive alongside others. Marcus frowned. That sounds good in theory, but how do we actually do that? What's the practical step here? Zeluna gestured toward the center of the chamber where a pedestal rose from the floor. On it rested a small, crystalline device. That is what you must take with you. It contains the key to unlocking the archive's full potential. With it, you can access the knowledge you need when you need it. Ryan eyed the crystal warily. And what's the catch? No catch, Zeluna said. But understand this, the knowledge you gain from it is a tool. It is up to you how you use it. It can be a great benefit or it can lead to great destruction. The responsibility is yours. Marcus stepped forward, studying the crystal. You said earlier that we were chosen. Why us? Because you have shown the capacity to work together, Zeluna said. To adapt to challenges and to seek understanding rather than conflict. That is what the galaxy needs now more than ever. Ryan felt a weight settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just a test of survival anymore. It was something bigger. He looked at Marcus. What do you think? Should we take it? Marcus hesitated, then nodded. If we don't, someone else will. Might as well be us. Ryan stepped forward and carefully lifted the crystal from the pedestal. It was warm to the touch, and as he held it, the holograms around them faded away, replaced by a calm, quiet light. Zeluna nodded approvingly. You have taken the first step, she said. The rest is up to you. As the chamber began to dim, the platform beneath them glowed once more. Ryan and Marcus shared a look, neither of them speaking, but both knowing that their journey was far from over. The light enveloped them and the archive faded from view, leaving them with more questions than answers and a shared determination to find the path forward together.